Hello and welcome to the first campaign diary of the Crimson Anvil campaign, Tales of the Crimson Anvil. It's named such because that is the party's company. It's the company name that they decided on. Overall, I think the session went really well. Initially, I was displeased with it, but I think that was just a weird funk that I was going through that I still can't quite put a finger on. But no, looking back, I accomplished everything I needed to accomplish, and there weren't too many mistakes. I did mess up a few times in the opening narration, but overall, I feel like I got everything I needed to communicate across. No, I don't always start my campaigns with that big of a lore dump, but this being a new setting, and considering that I didn't waste a lot of words in that beginning intro, there was a lot of names and concepts that I communicated that I feel will come up in the campaign. For example, I went over an old knight who became Count Aiken Shatterscale and his descendant, Hugard Shatterscale. I went over Gareth Girthwide multiple times, the history of the Dragon War, how a little bit in how the dwarves and the humans were involved together in that, just hinting at the Dragon War, the forming of Stout Shadow and how it lies on the border, kind of establishing the whole that right now everything's at peace, but that war between the three primary races is definitely a thing for this setting. Talking about the noble titles and making it very clear that, especially when I started reading about the history of Stout Shadow, Volume 2, showing that people are very, very, very serious about their titles and structure and having records for everything. Side note, when I said the date for that entry, 893 KA. KA stands for known age. That's something that maybe this campaign or another campaign could get into. This world itself has a lot of extra history that's not recorded. That everyone came into being at the same time, and past that point, there are ruins and structures and references, archaeological artifacts, magical artifacts left over from civilizations that came before them, but everyone's history starts at the same place. That all the humanoids start at the same place, and there's no history of what those people before them were. Kind of like a lost civilization, like an Atlantis type thing, if you really need to throw something like that out there. As for the rest of that, the actual entry for the Chronicle of the Town, that was mostly my way of introducing the player characters and a little bit of their history, both with each other and with the town, because we had come together before session and talked and even role-played a few things out and talked about, okay, why is this character here? Why is this character getting involved? That kind of thing. And so a lot of that got condensed and plopped into this little entry about how Kov came to town and held a metal concert, and people got injured as a result because the stirrings of their heart, they couldn't resist the urge to harm each other. Because in this setting, I guess, I like the idea of metal being a very violent type of music. That there is power when bards play, and in this particular case, this metal, which is not what the Dragon Bard would call this art form. No, the Dragon Bard would have called it something completely different. He would have called it something, his experimental phase, and a technique that he used to motivate his troops. But Kov, not all dragonfolk inherit memories from an ancestor, but Kov has inherited some memories of the Dragon Bard, and so he mistakenly believes in the concept of metal, which you may have noticed is a little bit similar to metal in our world. It's just something fun that Dubus wanted to play around with, and I thought, why not? But at the same time, I'm going to try and limit it and contextualize it within a fantasy world and make it believable. Instead of just a goofy reference, you know? As for the questing board, that was another big thing that I wanted to make sure that I had scripted out and could narrate, and I gave an example of effectively how I don't have to fill out an entire questing board, because we can just, by process of elimination, your characters are smart enough to rule out which ones are viable. So then I only have to make, like, I don't know, 2 to 5 quests at any given time. And I don't have to go insane and make 10 plus quests. And then I also wanted to go over how it worked, how pages work in terms of the ranking system, in terms of claiming quests with the questing daggers and the tallies and whatnot, and how they organize them. And then the players did ask some questions, so I was able to go over, not the players actually, that was Peter through Roll20. He was the chat demon, I think he called himself, something like that. His question opened up me being able to go over how a good chunk of the questing board is illusory, that each questing board technically has its own stuff on it, and there is effectively magical information being communicated from each questing board to another location and then pushed back out to the questing boards. And so only quests for the region that questing board is placed into will appear. So like there could be thousands of quests, but only 100 of them will appear on that Stout Shadow board because those are the only ones in that area. So like I was saying before with me trying to cram as much information and drop names and seed things within the narration, the Purge, the Cackling Kingdom of Evil, how it has a mad jester, and how I name dropped an NPC you could talk to for history. Like, that's very much something that players shouldn't do because they're too low of a level. That's why I used it as an example, but at the same time, I also know what's going on with that effectively haunted, cursed relic of the past. And that has its own little story, and it's fun for me to seed that kind of stuff. It also let me name drop the Hamlet of Ross, which is where Dubus's character Kov comes from. And then when I did the other extreme, where it's like, oh, this one's not viable because it's too easy and too many people have tried and they've all failed because it's impossible, effectively. Name dropping the character Topher Battle Pound. I'm not gonna spoil exactly where he is and whether or not he's significant, but that was another little seed that I was planting there. And then planting the seed of the Spooks, how they are a large adventuring company that operates out of Glimmergraves. Again, that's me seeding the city of Glimmergraves. Yeah, I said that right. Which was one of the starting quests. The players could venture to Glimmergraves and try and get a job there, effectively. That was not the quest they chose this first time around. They might next time, who can say. Cleric Needed, that one's the one that I had the most prepped for. That one does have its own little dungeon and NPCs and its own little atmosphere and story. And they might not do it, and that's totally fine. That's just part of the game. I can always recycle it in a future campaign, or we can just have time pass, and because no one did this quest, it escalated, and then we can have that pop up later on. But it's not what it seems. Yorence, the quest giver, didn't technically lie, but he's not speaking in full truth. He's not being forthcoming information. He has a secret to keep, and so he wants people to come to him and accept the quest, and then he'll be like, all right, here's the real stuff that I need you to do. But I didn't want to openly put this out there because it can ruin the business and the reputation of my master and possibly my own reputation. So I hope that at some point in time I'm able to fully go over that and that they do take that quest. But if not, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I'll definitely have to run it at some point in time. I could probably actually publish it, given enough time. And then the Caravan Guards Wanted, that's just an excuse for them to go to the city immediately if they want to go to Glimmergraves. Glimmergraves being this necropolis city that's run by the Ghost King and the Gilded Man, and it's got its own lore and history, and I'll hopefully be able to dig into that at some point in time in the future. Let's see, and then the one that they did, Banish a Devil, we didn't get as far into it as I would have liked, but that's also because I underestimated exactly how much 2 hours are, because in the past I put a 2-hour minimum on my sessions, because I feel like it's not worth everyone gathering together and getting into the game and getting a good roll going if it's less than 2 hours. But even 2 hours, I was having a hard time getting a good roll going, so that's why at first when we ended I wasn't satisfied with the session. Looking back, no, the players were right. That was a good session. It accomplished everything it needed to do for a first session. It introduced the setting, introduced the characters, introduced a lot of the key concepts for the mechanics within that setting, did a lot of world building, and then it got them to the destination of their first quest. So, in essence, a lot of things happened in that 2-hour session, but for some reason for me it didn't feel like it. I wanted to keep going. I felt like not enough happened. I won't go into the details, but for Banish a Devil, that quest, that's another one that I put a good amount of time into, and it's not as complicated as the Cleric Needed one, but it still has, depending on how the players play it, there's some key NPCs there that could influence the campaign, that could drag the players into conspiracy, so to say. So I'm excited to see how that plays out next session. Polga, Oaklarge, the quest giver, I wanted to just have a fun old lady to play and just be senile with, and then just goof off with. And that's, like, don't get me wrong, she's not so senile as that you can't take anything she says seriously. Like, her visions that she receives from her god are legitimate, and she is a trusted source when it comes to that kind of stuff. But when it comes to everything else, not so much. Ooh, okay, I've been looking through my notes over here whenever my eyes drift. One other big thing I dropped is the Circus of Eyes. Gareth Girthwide going to go and communicate and schedule the arrival of this Circus of Eyes, and it'll happen in about a month. So we'll see where the players are in the story by then, because downtime is an option. That's absolutely an option that they can take. They don't have to be on the constant quest grind. There might eventually be times where I run out of quests, specifically to incentivize downtime, but at the very least, after a month of time, the Circus of Eyes will be in Stout Shadow. If they're still in Stout Shadow at that point in time, that'll be a very fun event that I enjoyed seeding there. And if it doesn't happen, if they're out and about when they're scheduled, that's totally fine too. I can recycle the Circus of Eyes and put it at a different point in time. I've got another campaign in this setting coming up soon, Tombstone campaign. That'll actually be this Sunday, and then there'll be a campaign diary for that the following Monday. And I could always throw the Circus of Eyes into their campaign, so nothing is ever wasted when it comes to D&D. Don't get me wrong, I am not a master, an expert, or anything of the sorts. Everyone has room to grow, but that's something that I've learned, is that no matter what, the time and effort you put into doing prep work or writing or creating anything for your games, that can be recycled and reused if the players ignore it. So when it comes to planning campaigns, you generally want to not plan a campaign. You want to plan what you think will happen in this session, throw it at the players, see what they do, and then go from there to effectively inform your campaign based off of your players, what they do, and their interests. That's not to say you can't have really cool set pieces and say, alright, in this setting, I want there to be this cool lich, and they're going to affect the world like this. If the players don't stop them, then what? Does the campaign just end because the lich takes over the world? What if the players don't care? What if the players join the lich? Like, that's what I'm getting at, is even if you have these cool set pieces and these cool plans for the campaign, your players are not predictable. they will steer it off course. And so that's why I believe that it's important to start campaigns like this one, where there's not as much guidance. It has its own shortcomings, though, in that I provided 3 quests and then had to prep enough material for all 3 of those quests. But at the same time, giving them choice right out the gate, I found was a lot of fun. I'm glad that they chose the one they did. I think next session, introducing the... most likely he'll be a one-off villain, but who knows. The devil... pardon me. The devil that they're going to banish is named Snaggletooth. And he's got some NPC support that they'll find in the basement of this ruined fortress, but the players will also find their own NPC support. And I'm excited to see how this plays out. Again, it's not as big as like an actual dungeon. This is definitely an adventure that could have been run in one session. It wasn't, because it was a very short session, but even so, I'm excited to see where this goes. Oh, the one combat encounter for this, the spider, I was just running a vanilla phase spider, or as far as I know, I was running it vanilla. Maybe I messed up something with the lore, I don't care. If I did mess up anything with the lore, this is how phase spiders are in this setting, so there you go. But phase spiders are really cool. It wasn't turning invisible. What it was doing is, as a bonus action, going to the ethereal plane. So the ethereal plane, I guess, how to describe it? Do you know the Upside Down from Stranger Things? How it mirrors our world but is different? It's like that, only with an addition. Things on the ethereal plane can also see what's going on in the real world. So what it was doing was just blinking over to this other plane, so no one on the regular plane could interact with the phase spider, but the phase spider could still see what was going on the player's side of things. And so then it could reposition itself and then blink back. But it could only blink it could only blink one way once a turn. So it had to spend one turn in and one turn out. And that gives the players an opportunity to attack it. It's CR3. They're a party of level 3s. It wasn't gonna kill anyone. Like, I didn't think that it would even get anyone to half HP. Like, it's not that big a threat unless its poison goes off. If its poison goes off twice, then things can get a little bit dangerous, but statistically speaking, that wasn't gonna happen. So it was just a fun little encounter, not really meant to challenge the players. I knew that they wouldn't have any problems with it once they figured out the gimmick, which they didn't figure out the gimmick, and they used cantrips for most of the combat encounter, which didn't make much sense to me, but whatever. These things happen. That should be it. I'm gonna cut the video here. I will see you guys again Wednesday, ideally, if I can give me a voice off the ground. And then I'll see you again Sunday for the first session of Tombstone Campaign. It's a lot, same setting, but very different flavor from Crimson Anvil. Whereas Crimson Anvil is small town, more adventure company flavored, Tombstone is going to be a city campaign. Don't get me wrong, they're going to be going out of the city and going on adventures, and there's also a mega dungeon under the city that they might eventually go to as well, so it's not just going to be a city campaign, it's going to be a hodgepodge of a lot of things. But it's definitely going to have its own tone and flavor that I feel is going to be very different from how Crimson Anvil ends up playing out. We should go live around 4 Central Time on Twitch, and then Campaign Diary the following day. I hope to see you there at one of these 3 videos. And if not, then hey, that's fine. These things happen. Hopefully, you'll pop by again some point in the future. Bye.